Chapter 7 of the Lancashire Witches. This recording is in the public domain. Reading by Andy Minter. The Lancashire Witches, a Romance of Pendle Forest, by William Harrison Ainsworth. Introduction. The Last Abbot of Whalley. Chapter 7 The Abbey Mill. For a while the abbot remained shattered and stupefied by this terrible interview. At length he arose, and made his way, he scarce knew how, to the oratory. But it was long before the tumult of his thoughts could be at all allayed, and he had only just regained something like composure, when he was disturbed by hearing a slight sound in the adjoining chamber. A mortal chill came over him, for he thought it might be Demdike returned. Presently he distinguished a footstep stealthily approaching him, and almost hoped that the wizard would consummate his vengeance by taking his life. But he was quickly undeceived, for a hand was placed on his shoulder, and a friendly voice whispered in his ear, "Come along with me, Lord Abbot. Get up, quick, quick." Thus addressed, the abbot raised his eyes, and beheld a rustic figure standing beside him, divested of his clouted shoes, and armed with a long bare wood knife. "Dunna you know me, Lord Abbot?" cried the person. "I'm a friend, Hal Nabs o' Wiswall. You mind Wiswall, your own birthplace, Abbot? Dunna be feart, I say. I'm getten a stake clapt to yon windaw, and yo can be down it i' a trice, and along t' covered way by t' river side to t' mill." But the abbot stirred not. "Quick, quick!" implored Hal o' Nabs, venturing to pluck the abbot's sleeve. "Every minute's precious. Dunna be feart. Abel Croft, t' miller, is below. Poor Cuthbert Ashbead would ha' been here i'stead o' me if he could ha', but that accursed wizard, Nick Demdike, turned my aunt agen him, and drove t' pike head intended for himself into poor Cuthbert's side. They clapped me i' a dungeon, but Abel managed to get me out, and I then swore to do what poor Cuthbert would ha' done if he had been living. So here I am, Lord Abbot, come to set you free. Now you know all about it, you can ha' no more hesitation. Come, time presses, and I'm feared that God overhearing us." "I thank you, my good friend, from the bottom of my heart," replied the abbot, rising; "but however strong may be the temptation of life and liberty which you hold out to me, I cannot yield to it. I have pledged my word to the Earl of Derby to make no attempt to escape. Were the doors thrown open and the guard removed, I should remain where I am." "What!" exclaimed Hal o' Nabs, in a tone of bitter disappointment, "you winna go now aw's prepared? By t' mess, boh yo shan. Ey'st ne'er go back to Abel empty handed. If yo'n sworn to stay here, ey'n sworn to set yo free, and ey'st keep my oath. Willy nilly, yo shan go wi' me, Lord Abbot." "Forbear to urge me further, my good Hal," rejoined Paslew. "I fully appreciate your devotion, and I only regret that you and Abel Croft have exposed yourself to so much peril on my account. Poor Cuthbert Ashbead! When I beheld his body on the bier, I had a sad feeling that he had died on my behalf." "Cuthbert meant to rescue you, Lord Abbot," replied Hal, "and died resisting Nick Demdike's attempt to arrest him. Be ye aught devils?" he added, brandishing his knife fiercely. "Th' warlock shall ha' 3 inches o' cowd steel twixt his ribs, th' first time ey come across him." "Peace, my son," rejoined the abbot, "and forego your bloody design. Leave the wretched man to the chastisement of Heaven. And now farewell. All your kindly efforts to induce me to fly are vain." "You winna go?" cried Hal o' Nabs, scratching his head. "I cannot," replied the abbot. "Come wi' me to t' windaw, then," pursued Hal, "and tell Abel so. He'll think ey'n failed else." "Willingly," replied the abbot. And with noiseless footsteps he followed the other across the chamber. The window was open, and outside it was reared a ladder. "You mun go down a few steps," said Hal o' Nabs, "or else he'll na hear you." The abbot complied, and partly descended the ladder. "I see no one," he said. "It's dark," replied Hal o' Nabs, who was close behind him. "Abel canna be far off. At least I hear him. Go on." The abbot was now obliged to comply, though he did so with reluctance. Presently he found himself upon the roof of a building, which he knew to be connected with the mill by a covered passage running along the south bank of the Calder. Scarcely had he set foot there than Hal o' Nabs jumped after him, and, seizing the ladder, cast it into the stream, thus rendering Paslew's return impossible. "Now, lord abbot," he cried, with a low exulting laugh, "yo hanna broken your word, and ey'n kept mine. Yo're free agen your will." "You have destroyed me by your mistaken zeal," cried the abbot, reproachfully. "Nowt o' th' sort. Ey'n saved yo from destruction. This way, lord abbot, this way." And taking Paslew's arm, he led him to a low parapet, overlooking the covered passage before described. Half an hour before, it had been bright moonlight, but, as if to favour the fugitive, the heavens had become overcast, and a thick mist had arisen from the river. "Abel, Abel!" cried Hal o' Nabs, leaning over the parapet. "Here," replied a voice below. "Is aw reet? Is he wi' you?" "Yeigh," replied Hal. "What han ye done wi' t' stay?" cried Abel. "Never yo mind," returned Hal, "boh help t' abbot down." Paslew thought it vain to resist further, and with the help of Hal o' Nabs and the miller, and further aided by some irregularities in the wall, he was soon safely landed near the entrance of the passage. Abel fell on his knees, and pressed the abbot's hand to his lips. "Oh, blessed Lady be praised, you're free!" he cried. "Dunna stand talking there, Abel," interposed Hal o' Nabs, who by this time had reached the ground, and who was fearful of some new remonstrance on the abbot's part. "I'm feared o' pursuit." "Yo needna be feared o' that, Hal," replied the miller. "T' garder's safe enough. One o' our chaps has just took 'em up a big black jack full o' stout ale, an ey warrant me they winna stay here awhile. Win it please yo to come wi' me, lord abbot." With this he marched along the passage, followed by the others, and presently arrived at a door, against which he tapped. A bolt being withdrawn, it was instantly opened to admit the party, after which it was as quickly shut and secured. In answer to a call from the miller, a light appeared at the top of a steep ladder like flight of wooden steps, and up these Paslew, at the entreaty of Abel, mounted, and found himself in a large low chamber, the roof of which was crossed by great beams, covered thickly with cobwebs, whitened by flour, while the floor was strewn with empty sacks and sieves. The person who held the light proved to be the miller's daughter, Dorothy, a blooming lass of 18, and at the other end of the chamber, seated on a bench before a turf fire, with an infant on her knees, was the miller's wife. The latter instantly arose on beholding the abbot, and placing the child on a corn bin, advanced towards him and dropped on her knees, while her daughter imitated her example. The abbot extended his hands over them, and pronounced a solemn benediction. "Bring your child also to me, that I may bless it," he said, when he concluded. "It's no my child, lord abbot," replied the miller's wife, taking up the infant and bringing it to him. "It were brought to me this very neet by Abel. I wish it were fair enough, I'm sure, for it's a deformed little urchin. One of the eyes is lower set than t'other, and reet looks up, while left looks down." And as she spoke, she pointed to the infant's face, which was disfigured, as she had stated, by a strange and unnatural disposition of the eyes, one of which was set much lower in the head than the other. Awakened from sleep, the child uttered a feeble cry, and stretched out its tiny arms to Dorothy. "You ought to pity it for its deformity, poor little creature, rather than to reproach it, mother," observed the young damsel. "Marry, come out," cried her mother, sharply. "Yo'n getten fine feelings wi' your learning fro' t' good feythers, Dolly, and ey said before ey wished the brat were far enough." "You forget it has no mother," suggested Dorothy, kindly. "No matter if it hasn't," returned the miller's wife. "Bess Demdike's no great loss." "Is this Bess Demdike's child?" cried Paslew, recoiling.